Welcome everyone to this webinar, sharing insights from early adopters of the ESG metrics for mobile. My name is Janine Vos and I head up the ESG Accelerator at the GSMA, where we run projects to build capacity, fast-track innovation, and really drive responsible business practices. But before we kick off, just to note that this session will be recorded and published on the GSMA website in a couple of weeks. So for brief context to the session, as part of our global sustainability program, we collaborate with leading mobile operator experts and partners from around the world to share best practices, to create insights, and collaborate on joint activities, all with the aim to really integrate sustainability into core business. And it is with this group that about 18 months ago, we published the ESG metrics for mobile, really with the aim to provide a consistent approach to measure and communicate sustainability performance on those issues that are the most pertinent to the mobile industry. So since then, across 23, we have been working with a leading group of operators to pilot the metrics and also facilitate the adoption into business reporting. And so during the session today, you will first hear from GSMA, who have captured the results in a recently published report. And following on from which, you'll hear through a panel discussion from Globe and Dialogue, who were front runners in adopting the ESG metrics for mobile into their reporting last year. And they will explain the value that they see in the metrics, how it has transformed their business, and also will be able to share some recommendations and lessons learned. Throughout the session, please feel free to post questions in the chat, in the Q&A section, because at the end of the presentation, at the end of the panel discussion as well, we'll open up to check those questions raised and have an interactive debate as well. So really excited that you're all joining us here today, and I would like to now hand over to James of GSMA to kick off the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Janine. Yes, I'm going to talk for around 15 minutes here. I really just want to focus on some of the key findings from last year's pilot. Before I do that, though, I'll take a couple of minutes just to provide some information about the two frameworks we use to assess the sustainability performance of operators, the ESG Metrics for Mobile framework and the Sustainability Assessment Framework. So let's begin with the ESG Metrics for Mobile framework. This is an ESG reporting framework tailored specifically to the telecom sector. It's relatively new, as Janine said. It was developed in 2022 and incorporates 10 industry-specific KPIs. These KPIs offer consistent and comparable perspective on the industry's most material impacts and drivers of value. We used 5 criteria to determine the KPIs. We asked, are the KPIs meaningful for stakeholders? Will the KPIs influence internal decision-making? Are the KPIs comparable and feasible? And finally, are the KPIs the best indicators of a company's ability to create value in the short, medium, and long term? As you can see, the set of 10 core KPIs are organized under 4 categories: environment, digital inclusion, digital integrity, and supply chain. Where possible, the metrics are aligned to or are adapted from international reporting frameworks and existing standards. And operators are encouraged to report against as many of these KPIs as they find material and appropriate. I'll go through each of these 4 areas in more detail in my presentation. And I'll also share the results of a pilot we conducted last year, where 10 operators submitted data on these KPIs. The focus of this presentation, my presentation, is on the ESG metrics for mobile framework, but we'll also reference a second framework in places. That's the Sustainability Assessment Framework. Now, the Sustainability Assessment Framework takes a slightly wider lens on sustainability issues. It looks at publicly available resources, mainly websites and annual reports, and analyzes the strategies and policies operators have in place to deliver on a set of 16 material issues. It looks at whether those stakeholders responsible for delivering against the commitments are held to account, and whether operators are able to provide examples of how these stakeholders are engaged on each issue and how they respond to any feedback. As I say, the presentation will focus mostly on the ESG metrics and mobile framework, but I'll also reference the Sustainability Assessment Framework from time to time to provide some wider context. So let's start with the first of those pillars of the ESG metrics framework, the environment. So as you can see on the slide, in recent years, a growing number of operators have set science-based targets and net zero targets, demonstrating the mobile industry's commitment to not only take responsibility for its emissions, but also take ownership of indirect emissions created through their supply chains. Operators in Europe and North America are making the biggest strides on climate action, with many operators in these regions expanding their energy efficiency programs and sharply increasing their use of renewable energy. In other regions, the picture is more mixed. While there are strong ambitions and have been strong progress among some operators, there have also been challenges to reaching targets. We know some regions face particular economic constraints that can limit the ability of operators to invest in green technologies. And we also know that sometimes there are challenging policy and regulatory environments that hinder the implementation of sustainable practices. For the ESG metrics framework, we categorize environment KPIs into three areas: emissions, energy consumption, and waste reduction. As you can see, we're focused on the first two of these areas on this slide. So analysis of the data submitted by operators participating in the pilot showed there was an average 5% year-on-year reduction in absolute Scope 1 and 2 emissions. Comparing Scope 3 emissions among operators is more challenging due to frequent changes in reporting boundaries, methodologies, and database. The complexity extends to year-on-year comparisons, as you can see, with two operators showing fluctuations exceeding plus or minus 50%. Setting these aside, though, the participating operators in the pilot still achieved an average year-on-year reduction in Scope 3 emissions. This is helped by operators increasingly integrating environmental criteria into their tenders. We've also seen operators expand initiatives such as recycling network equipment and user devices. Moving on to energy consumption, you can see in the table there that the bulk of total energy consumed comes from the network. There tends to be quite a bit of variation in network usage across operators, and these differences can be attributed to factors such as user behavior patterns, data traffic per connection, climate, or the geography of country networks. Let's move on to the second pillar of the framework, digital inclusion. So this is about ensuring equitable access to mobile products and services for all members of society, particularly those underserved. The issue is summarized in the chart on the left-hand side, and this chart shows that while 95% of the population were covered by mobile broadband at the end of 2022, only 50% used mobile internet. The remaining 43%, the unconnected population, are disproportionately poorer, less educated, rural and female, demonstrating the importance of initiatives aimed at driving internet adoption and use among these groups. This is a key focus area for operators and an area where they're increasingly making more thorough public disclosures. This is highlighted by the GSMA Sustainability Assessment Framework, which shows that many operators are now making public their digital inclusion policies with clear commitments to diversity. For the ESG metrics framework, we ask operators to provide data on 3G, 4G and 5G network coverage as a percentage of the population. You can see on the slide there that most operators report extensive 3G and 4G coverage. The average across the pilot group is 95–96%. 5G coverage is unsurprisingly a lot lower, given that most operators are still in the relatively early stages of deploying these networks. Digital inclusion, of course, is not just about network coverage. It is also about tackling other barriers to mobile internet access, including the affordability aspect of these services. All participating operators in our pilot group indicated that the average price of a 1 GB plan was well below the 2% of income threshold, and that is the broadband commission's affordability target. Smartphone affordability, however, continues to take up a much bigger chunk of a person's income, and this highlights the importance of operator initiatives such as letting customers pay for smartphones in instalment plans. The final aspect of the digital inclusion pillar is digital skills. Now, pretty much all operators run some form of free digital skills training program aimed at helping individuals make the most out of their mobile subscription. Data from the pilot group shows that on average, 0.24% of subscribers received digital training across the 10 pilot operators last year. Now, this percentage might appear rather modest, but it equates to more than 13 million people on an annual basis when extrapolated across the total global mobile subscriber base. The third pillar of our framework is digital integrity. And this is about ensuring that as online services become ingrained in all aspects of our lives, mobile operators take the necessary steps to ensure that people can use these services safely and securely. Now, there are various facets to this, summarized in the diagram on the screen. So operators have a responsibility to promote the safe use of mobile services, protect customers' privacy and personal data, protect public safety, and ensure the integrity and security of mobile network infrastructure. Research from the GSMA's Sustainability Assessment Framework shows operators have made good progress in a number of these areas. Privacy and cybersecurity consistently ranks as one of the highest scoring material issues within the framework, with leading operators establishing clear policy, governance, and reporting structures. If we take Telefonica as an example, it publishes data on requests for information by authorities, proceedings opened on data protection issues, data protection fines, cybersecurity incidents classified as serious, and the total number of customers affected by data breaches. Now, of course, not all operators report such granular detail on granular data on these issues. So for the ESG Metrics framework, we focus on 3 KPIs, which we believe all operators are capable of reporting on. These KPIs are aligned to the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and they cover the number of data breaches, the number of customers affected, and the number of regulatory actions taken. You can see the results of the pilot group of operators on the screen, and notably half of the operators in the pilot group encountered no data breaches at all in the past year. Among the operators who did face a data breach, the largest breach affected 9.8 customers per million subscribers, while the other data breaches reported by operators in the pilot group occurred on a much smaller scale. The digital integrity pillar also asks operators to provide information on a couple of yes/no questions. As you can see on the right-hand side there, all operators in the pilot said they have a policy specifically covering a customer's digital rights. All operators also said they have specific controls or programs in place to improve online safety for children and other vulnerable groups. The fourth and final pillar of the ESG framework focuses on supply chains, so a critical aspect in the mobile industry. We know operators engage with suppliers that vary from small and medium-sized enterprises, offering local services, to large global corporations, manufacturing network equipment and electronic devices. Mobile operator supply chains are therefore often complex, comprising multiple tiers and involving thousands of workers spread across various countries. And this underscores the vulnerability of operators to supply chain risks. Such practices like subpar environmental standards and mistreatment of workers have a negative impact on workers, their families and local communities. And if poor practices come to light, it's often the well-recognized brands at the top of the chain that bear the brunt of reputational damage. This emphasizes the significance of selecting products from responsible suppliers. The GSMA's Sustainability Assessment Framework indicates that most operators provide detailed public disclosures on responsible sourcing. Among the 25 operator groups evaluated in the framework, 22 have established policies to ensure suppliers adhere to ethical, social, and human rights, as well as governance standards. And notably, 17 of these groups go a step further by providing quantitative performance data, demonstrating their commitment to holding suppliers to account. The GSMA's ESG Metrics Framework asks operators to provide data on 2 supply chain KPIs: the percentage of suppliers screened against a sustainable procurement policy and the percentage of suppliers assessed against a sustainable procurement policy through site visits. The proportion of suppliers assessed ranges from 65 to 100%. The range of values emphasizes the complexity of screening suppliers against sustainable procurement policies, particularly when dealing with extensive supplier bases, often numbering in the thousands. This undertaking demands significant resources, and it's therefore logical to prioritize screening the most strategically important suppliers. These tend to be the ones for whom no viable alternatives exist, and suppliers who account for the largest portion of total spend. To ensure transparency, in-person site visits also play an important role in assessing suppliers. However, the costs associated with these visits prompt operators to strike a balance between in-person assessments and alternative methods such as online inspections through video conferencing tools. That concludes the data points I'd like to share with you today. I hope this presentation has provided an insight into the work we did last year as part of the pilot, and also explained the ESG frameworks we use at the GSMA in a bit more detail. I hope it's also demonstrated the benefits of embracing a standardized set of ESG KPIs across the mobile industry. We believe that fostering a greater level of consistency in ESG reporting is a vital step in streamlining data collection and reporting processes for operators. We also believe it's a vital step in improving engagement with external stakeholders who can improve their understanding of the mobile industry's sustainability efforts. We plan to run an extended version of a similar ESG benchmarking activity in 2024 based on new 2023 data. However, to make the results as representative and impactful as possible, we would like to increase the number of participating operators. We've put the email address on the screen there so you can get in touch if you're interested in participating or if you have any further questions. And we've also added a link there to the report, which contains some of the insights that I've shared with you today. With that, I'll hand you back to Janine, who I believe has been collating the audience questions for Tim and I to answer.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, James, for bringing to life really the ESG metrics and sharing those insights. And yes, we've received some questions in the Q&A. The first one, I guess, you mentioned at the start that there's also the self-assessment framework. So the first question asks, how does the ESG metrics for mobile complement other GSMA or other GSMA intelligence initiatives around the ESG?
I can take that actually, and it's really good question because this is such a broadening area. So we look at ESG as a broad umbrella, as James has outlined here, and what we're really trying to do is understand the main dynamics driving progress among each of the sort of sub areas of ESG, as well as really, secondly, create a common set of metrics that the industry can coalesce around. To your question about how this complements other metrics, we actually have already been engaged in an energy benchmarking project for 3 years now on the same model, where we are gathering data from a number of operators across the world, and that's grown really amazingly. And that's what we're trying to do here. And as James has run through, the early indicators are really exciting, and we think there's a lot to build on. The key is just being able to scale that up.
Great, thank you, Tim. And a related question has come up in the Q&A. So it says, thank you for the presentation. For the environmental KPIs, are these indicators the most significant environmental impact in terms of operator activities, products, and services?
Yeah, so I think there is a common question around what, as James alluded to, what are the most impactful metrics? We think these tell a really important story. We know that there is a lot of focus around energy consumption, emissions progress, the breakdown of that between scope 1, 2, and then crucially 3. And I think that scope 3 is really key as we look ahead on the environmental dimension, because it incorporates the supply chain, and that is where the vast majority of emissions, over 70%, reside. And so that linking through the efforts that the telco operators are making with their supply chain partners and others is really key in that. So I think we've got a good set of metrics, but if that said, if people watching this or that want to join on feel that there are additional metrics to suggest, we're all ears for that.
Great, thank you, Tim. Another question is, did you observe any trends or variations in the reporting levels among operators participating in the pilot? So clearly there were some variations in the results. Did you see some variations in reporting levels?
Sure, I can take this one, Tim. So as I showed in my presentation, so our set of ESG KPIs encompass a range of metrics, and that ranges from well-established ones like emissions, energy consumption, and network coverage, to ones that are particularly or perhaps less emerging and less tested. So that's things like digital skills and some of the waste metrics too, which are kind of novel, and operators are just starting to get to grips with the reporting in those areas. So that's where we observed some variation in the reporting levels. And so, for example, there was perhaps more limited data disclosure on e-waste, and that can be attributed to various factors. So we know that there's often a data gap in terms of what happens to devices when the first consumer no longer needs the device but does not return it to an operator. And there are also, in some cases, limited organised or formal systems for taking back these devices in some markets, and that creates further data availability challenges. We believe that adherence to these metrics will improve over time as ESG reporting moves up the management agenda across the industry. And it's also why we believe it's valuable for operators to start reporting against a consistent set of metrics, and also working closely and learning from other operators that we highlight in this report who are perhaps leading in some of these areas when it comes to data collection and data publication.
Great, thank you, James. Look at the next question. It's actually maybe one that I can cover. It asks, do you plan adding nature and biodiversity to the metrics? So yes and no. So in the first instance, no. So these were the 10 metrics that were, really the most material for the industry. Nevertheless, that said, nature and biodiversity is really a theme that is gaining more interest and attention. And we actually have set up a dedicated working group this year, trying to understand better what are the biodiversity impacts of the mobile industry. And we're going through a detailed process with our members to understand that better. And so we're looking towards publishing outcomes of that towards the end of the year. So please watch this space. And if you're interested to learn more, do not hesitate to reach out to participate in that. Let me see, there's some more questions that have come through. Yes, there are different ESG reporting standards, GRI, SASB, many more, creating confusions as each is with different scope, criteria, and indicators. So how do you cope with that challenge? And I think it's almost a reason why we also set up these metrics. I don't want to step into your answer, but James or Tim, would you like to cover that?
Yeah, so I think you're right, Jean. This is a key reason why we wanted to set up these metrics. And as I highlighted at the beginning of my presentation, where possible, the metrics align to or have been adapted from international reporting frameworks and existing standards. And in the report we've produced, we have a table showing how the metrics we use relate to the different existing standards already. And of course, over time, this is going to be a focus area for this project, and we're going to be looking to align to those existing standards as closely as possible, because we obviously don't want to be creating too much additional burden for operators. The idea is that this helps to simplify and really focus efforts in the mobile industry when it comes to reporting on ESG metrics.
And maybe, I mean, that's absolutely right. And if I could just briefly build on that, I think one of the key litmus tests for what we're doing here is whether the operators who join on with this effort go on to report the metrics in their own public reporting, and we are starting to see that with a number of the groups. And what that says is, if you can get to a common set of metrics, but that isn't so expansive as to lose its focus, these metrics can convey impact. They can convey impact on both for the operator and on their wider footprint, that investors, regulators, other external parties will want to view in addition to the operator itself. And so that's really where we're looking to go. It's not meant to replace any of the international frameworks, which each have a defined purpose. It's there. These metrics are there to track progress for the telco sector on its impact, its proximate impact.
Yeah, so it's really to complement those frameworks.
Very much.
Then a final question from my side. So you really explained, you're looking for more operators to join this initiative in 24. So could you speak a little bit to the value for members that are thinking of maybe participating and joining? What's the value that brings, and do you give them any further information, for example, beyond the publicly available report?
Yeah, so I think there's three things I'd hit on there. One is that there's a lot of value in understanding the data analytics of how your progress is going, where there is improvement, where there's gap areas, be that on environmental KPIs, be it on digital inclusion, whatever, just having an evidence base, and that comes through this. Second, I think it's important to be able to track your progress versus a sector benchmark. What we want to do as this scales up is be able to add regional level dimensions and versus global, so that if you're an operator in the Gulf versus North America, you can see your progress versus neighboring operators compared to the global average. So I think there's a benchmark point. But then I think there's a third point around visibility and best practice. And the best practice is really key, because one of the things we do is gather people in virtual forums and in person sometimes to discuss what's worked and what hasn't. Read across how you can take learnings from that. And that sort of best practice is really key to implement into day-to-day operations. So I think all those things are really important, and we really have had a positive response from those who have joined so far. So we would definitely encourage more to join on this year. I don't know, James, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think you've summarized it perfectly there, Tim.
Okay.
Right. Great. Thank you both very much. Thank you, James. Thank you, Tim, for sharing these insights, and I equally hope that many more operators will join this year and are inspired by your work and presentation. So on that note, I'd now like to hand over to Uche Ogbonna, who is our Sustainability Director, who will chair the panel with thought leaders from Globe and Dialogue. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, James. Great to be here and great to welcome everyone to this panel segment, where we will be discussing with two of our very important members, Globe and Dialogue, and together they will be sharing experiences during the pilot phase of the ESG metrics for mobile adoption and reporting process. So let us meet our panelists. First up, Apple Evangelista. Now, Apple is the head of the Sustainability and Social Responsibility team of leading Philippine mobile and digital solutions platform, Globe Telecom. Apple has over 15 years experience in corporate social responsibility and ESG, and today she is overseeing the great transition work happening in the ESG space, including strategies, programs, advocacies, and reporting. Great to have you with us, Apple. And on the panel as well with Apple is Athis Da Silva. Now, Acid is a senior manager with the sustainability division of Dialog Axiata PLC. Dialog Axiata is a leading telecoms provider in Sri Lanka, and he has over 20 years experience in leading and managing sustainability and social impact projects. Acid plays an integral role in directing the division's social innovation and sustainability portfolios. I'm really delighted to have both of you on the panel with us. And to our guests, if you do have any questions in the course of the panel conversation that you would want our panelists to answer, please pop them into the Q&A channel. My name is Uche Obona, and I am the Sustainability Director for GSMA. Let us begin. So my first question, that question has been at the top of a lot of minds, especially since the ESG metrics for mobile is not a mandatory requirement for network operators. So my question, and I would like you, Apple, to go first, and then Acid, just to get your thoughts as we get into the conversation. What motivated your organization to adopt, the metrics, go through the pilot phase, bearing in mind that, this whole exercise will require some time, some resource, and some level of commitment? Apple?
Thanks, Uche. And hi, everyone. Greetings from the Philippines. So let me give you some context before I give the reason why we have adopted the metrics. Unlike in other countries, sustainability reporting is very, very young here in the Philippines. It was just it was released as mandatory in 2019, and we do have some standards that we have to comply with: GRI, TCFD, IR, and SASB. Fortunately for us in Globe and some of the members of the Singtel Group, our commitment to sustainability started as early as 2008. So we were no stranger to the practice. But that's the thing, right? We all have this pain point of having an alphabet soup in ESG reporting. It's getting a lot more complicated by the day. So piloting the metrics for us was really strategic, as it allowed us to hyper prioritize based on the material topics for the telcos on what we have to do. It clearly identified metrics that are specific to us in the industry, metrics that we are very familiar with. So for example, you would seldom see ESG metrics that will encourage you to have online safety controls, measures in place that is beyond infrastructure. But for the GSMA ESG metrics, it's requiring you to do just that. Same for digital skills. And for me, this is what sets the mobile industry metrics apart. It is metrics that are material to us as an industry.
Fantastic. Acid.
Yeah, hi everyone. So yes, so our journey at Dialog when it comes to sustainability and reporting actually started as same as Globe in 2008. So what happened over the years, what we realized was that when we were collecting the data, when we were trying to pitch to our senior management and even the functional heads, sometimes they didn't understand it as to what we were trying to do, because we started very early. So as Apple mentioned, the alphabet soup, ESG alphabet soup, right? We tried out different metrics. We've been reporting on same, but when it came to the GSMA matrix, ESG matrix, something what we found was that the senior management, the functional heads all understood it because it's industry specific, right? So they could relate to it better. And as a result, what happened was that the providing of data became better, and the resilience factors all dropped down in a big way, right? And we were able to collect the data and actually analyze and make sense out of it better. And also we were able to present this to the board and take timely decisions, which is one of the most important things. Otherwise, before we were doing our GRI reporting, which we are still doing, but when it comes with the sustainability reporting, it was annual, right? And if we need to do any course correction, we had to wait an entire year till the report came out and do certain corrections. But with the GSMA's ESG metrics, what happened was we were able to do it on a quarterly basis and take quick action based on the data that we gathered. So it was very useful. And also we went a step further. Using the GSMA matrix, we started reporting to our board risk and compliance committee on a quarterly basis, and also getting feedback on a regular basis from the board itself. And the same matrix was used to provide information to our investors. So it was very helpful in adapting it. It had supported us in a big way up to date.
Thank you very much. I mean, I hear you both talking about the value and the usefulness. And Asit, I'd like to, press in a little bit on that. And I know that the metrics have been very useful, especially in internal engagement. But I know just at the tail end of what you were saying, you mentioned investors. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? How has the metrics helped you in your external engagement with external stakeholders?
Yeah. So what happens is, as a dialogue on a quarterly basis, after we present the ESG matrix along with other financial details, the finance team has a meeting with the potential investors and the existing investors. So at this particular meeting, the content on the ESG work, what we are doing, is presented to our investors, mainly for them to identify any potential risk, that is sustainability or ESG perspective related risks are there or not, and to indicate to them what actions Dialog is taking by being proactive, identifying this potential risk and telling our investors that, okay, look, hey, this is what we are doing, and these are the things that we've identified. And also by giving the matrix, they know that it's structured so that this gets controlled and monitored on a regular basis, and it's been reported. So it's mainly to build the confidence and the trust of the investors. Yeah. So it had gone well for us. Yeah.
Yes, great. And a quick word to some of our members that are out there. Please don't forget, if you're interested in signing up to the metrics, please reach out to us, and we'll provide the guidance on how to do so. Apple, I'm going to swing back to you. We've talked about the value of the metrics within the business. We've talked about how it can, help to build the confidence and the business trust externally. And I know it's just been 1 year since, the adoption of the metrics. But in Globe, would you say that the metrics have the potential or have positively influenced your business procedures in any way? And if yes, could you tell us in any specific way that you probably have seen business improvement within the ecosystem at Globe?
Yeah, for Globe, it was really relevant to us even beyond the reporting cycle. So it became our framework on how we can operationalize sustainability in the company. So when we talk to our commercial team, when we talk to our network team, we make use of the metrics. It's useful for us because it narrows down actionable areas for us already. So unlike most reporting standards, they look at enterprise level strategies and programs. For this one, it's putting the customer first, meaning it is asking for us to disclose and look into the affordability of our products, for example, the digital skills programs that we have, online safety, which are very relevant to all of our customer base. And because it is already narrowed down, you will also be able to narrow down on mitigating various ESG-linked risks that will come your way. And also, lastly, metrics are grounded and practical for us in the mobile industry. So the GSMA ESG metrics, particularly the KPIs on digital inclusion, is very timely, especially now that the telcos are very instrumental in building each of our country's digital economy.
Incredible. I see that what you have done is basically to apply the ESG metrics right within the DNA of Globe as a business, and that is really remarkable. I said one of the things that Apple just talked about was the practicability of the metrics and the fact that it is infused into various programs and initiatives. And I'm sure you've seen the ESG report, the recent report that we published, the ESG metrics for mobile insights of early adopters. And we cited a very interesting circularity program from Orange called the Oscar program, which is a very unique case study. Now, could you speak to that? Does Dialogue do anything related to that? Is there any similar circularity program that you reported on that, you know, we could hear from you and share?
Yes, of course. So one of the key programs that Dialogue have been running is our eKunu program. So eKunu stands for, in Sinhalese, it means electronic waste. So this is about the electronic waste we collect from the public, like the handsets, the Dialogue television, set-top boxes, the remote controls, etc. And how do we dispose them, right, in an environmental friendly manner? And also we have the internal e-waste control program, where we look at our internal e-waste generated by the tower operations and the day-to-day business operations. So how do we collect this data, collect this and dispose, and what happens at the end of the life cycle of it? So what we did was, with the matrix being adapted, we quarterly started reporting on this. So one of the key things, I think most of you all on this call might know that Sri Lanka went through a financial crisis in 2022. So what happened was, immediately the devices we could not import because the country was having a dollar crisis, right? Because we were reporting on the e-waste collection program, one of the immediate benefits we got was, okay, the collected waste, we immediately started looking at what can be reused and put back to the market, refurbish and reuse, right? So that program went really well, and there was a huge quantity that we were able to take back. And also, because we reported this on a quarterly basis, we were able to keep the board updated, and we got direction from them, and they knew exactly what was happening. And this helped us continue the business without any shortcomings. So that was one aspect. And then for the 2023 year, we managed to collect 1,997 tons of waste, electronic waste, from our network systems. And this was reported, and thereby improving or increasing the transparency, and also which alarmed, or rather gave way to how much more we need to change our e-waste management program. So the insights to the board was very important. So likewise, it had helped us in so many practical different ways. Another thing is our GHG emission reduction. So likewise, it had supported us in multiple areas. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You know, reporting is a very, very important aspect of what we do. And I know that there are probably some participants on the call who would like to know where some of these important reports are housed. And if you would visit our website, you would find the SDG Impact Report, and you would also find the insights from the early adopters of the metrics report as well. And they make for very useful read. And then, of course, there are lots of case studies that are there. So please do well to visit the website and avail yourself of the resource. Okay, Apple, let's keep building on the conversation around reporting. As you know, the ESG metrics is divided into 4 categories: environment, digital integrity, digital inclusion, and of course, you know, sustainable supply chain. And in the environment space, we find that a lot of organizations may not be very comfortable reporting around renewable energy practices, but Globe did. And I think that is worth mentioning here, that Globe actually reports extensively on renewable energy practices. So my question is, why does Globe as an organization think that it's important to provide this level of transparency in reporting against the ESG metrics for mobile and indeed other frameworks?
Very, very important, because sustainability reporting as a practice allows us to, of course, track our progress. And it can also help us benchmark between us and our peers, even our past accomplishments. And it can also help us track where we're going, right? Second is also in terms of accountability. It holds us accountable to the goals that we have committed to. And this goes beyond the parameters of environment. And lastly would be stakeholder engagement. So a sustainability report with focused metrics such as this one will guide our viewers, our readers, our investors, shareholders, employees even, to find what they're looking for. I describe it, I was talking to my team members and I describe it as, you know how food labels have nutrition facts, right? So if all of or most of the MNOs, for example, would have some information across the 10, then our customers and our investors, our shareholders would be able to compare or even support, because they can see the gaps between the practice, right? So again, if our end game or if one of our end games are to win the trust of our stakeholders, just like the rigor of financial reporting, then we can begin to look at sustainability reporting from a lens we know best, right? From a mobile network operator. And this is a very, very good start.
Thank you, Apple. I do like the parallel that you drew with nutritional facts. And so this is the level of transparency that the ESG metrics brings. And like you said, it is very useful, in helping everyone, in fact, stakeholders, investors, and even employees to understand what the business is doing, and also helps the business stay accountable to itself to be sure that it is actually going in the right direction. Thank you very much for that. So, as it,
Yeah.
I know Dialogue Axiata participated in the process from the very beginning, through the entire process, and I do know that it was pretty rigorous. So let's be very practical now. What challenges did you face during the implementation of the ESG metrics, and how are you able to navigate through to the point, where you're now reporting quarterly from what you've said?
Yes, so Ushay, actually, as I started off, right, Dialogue had been reporting based on the GRI matrix, right? So one of the key challenges while doing so, what we found was that even the management to the functional heads, sometimes the requirement that we had was not understood really well as to why we are doing this data collection and the whole reporting story, because we started in 2008 fairly early, right? And when all of these words, ESG, sustainability, was not spoken of in a big scale, right? So what happened was when the ESG matrix from the GSMA was introduced, as I mentioned earlier, it spoke the same language that our functional heads were talking about, right? And it was very easy for us to put it across to them in getting them to provide the data. And also when we did up the dashboard and showed it, then they started thinking, oh, look, this is what it is all about, right? And when we made it even shorter on a quarterly basis, it was even getting better, because then here they found themselves being kind of compared on a quarter on quarter basis, right? Which also suggested that if any corrective action needs to be taken, it needed to be done. And also it gave the leverage to the functional heads to go back to the board, and if they require additional budgets, right, emergency budgets, they could ask for it. And from the other side, we have been reporting to the board with the potential problem before. So it made it that much more easier by implementing the matrix to get certain things moving. So the needle movement was much better when it comes to the implementation of this. So the biggest challenge was, I would say, the data collection part. But once we were able to crack the code and put it across thanks to the GSMA matrix, then the data started coming in smoothly. Of course, the first time there were slight delays because they were not used to giving it quarterly basis. So they had to do certain adjustments within their internal processes, especially the emissions and the energy usage data, because you need to get the billing done and then collect it and do it. So that took a little while. But now, after practicing it for a little over a year, uh, things have become more streamlined and things are flowing smoothly at the moment. So, yeah, I think that was the biggest challenge we had, and we overcome it by constantly engaging and showing the benefit and showing how their data is being used. So that's, I think, my addition. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And as you were speaking, I could see Apple nodding her head, kind of agreeing with you, and I'm sure that there are a lot of our members who are on the call who have also adopted would also agree with you. So I'm going to swing to you, Apple, largely because you were nodding your head in agreement. That means you also went through this path. And you are aware that we have 10 of our members who actually have adopted, the metrics. And we do know that there are quite a few others who have indicated interest and they want to really engage into the process. Now, as one who has gone through the path and gone through the process, let's say maybe 3 tips, 5 tips, I don't know, what would you recommend? How would you advise that any of our members or any of the telcos who want to engage, and adopt the ESG metrics? What are the steps that that you would recommend? That look, if you do it this way, it would be easier, and you will arrive at the destination faster. Yeah, I can see you. Okay, go ahead, Apple.
It is overwhelming. It's not easy, right? But like what Asit said, right? Those are metrics that we already know. So first is don't wait till you have everything. Report on what you have depending on the risk appetite of the company. Report on what you're comfortable with, but ensure that whatever it is that you're going to report on, we're going to follow through or deepen in the next few years. It's not a game of quantity. It's a game of quality even. You can also start building your internal network, squad, task force, however you call it in your company. Leverage on whatever existing data you have, and they have. The metrics were built in based on various frameworks anyway. But what is important is look at what you have and what you can regularly report on. And as you go along, what you will discover is that you already have it somehow, someplace. What will help you then to put it in this context is use the sustainability lens in your analysis. So as mobile operators, it's natural for us. We have our energy consumption, our electricity bills, our subscriber count even. Those are normal reporting metrics for us. But if you see the sub-targets, you'll see how we can further contextualize it. There are trickier metrics, of course, but what makes it very tricky is that because it doesn't have or there are no publicly available data on it. Let's take supply chain, for example. And when we talk about digital skills, there's no perfect score. There's no perfect program, right? There's a lot of cultural context as well. So what helped us to is really the knowledge bank that GSMA has, the resources, white papers, toolkits. We were really reading through each one of it. And when in doubt, we just send them an email. And it's really a huge support system because we don't know all the answers and we couldn't figure it out sometimes, but it will really help to have that conversation. And again, it's not a 10 over 10. It's really the quality of data and the consistency of data that we're after.
Absolutely. And I really like that. And for those who probably are considering doing this, I need to reiterate the fact that yes, GSMA is available even for one-on-one sessions. And all you have to do is shoot us an email and we will do our best, to make it happen properly for you. Okay, so while we wind down, we started with both of you answering the same question, and I would like to end with both of you answering the same question as well, to the best of your ability. You know, I don't want company secrets and stuff, you know, but I mean, we've come into 2024, guys, and we're looking down the road with our regular ESG and, you know, sustainability lens. And I'm gonna start with you, Asid. So very broadly, what is going to be? Could you share with us, you know, what, you know, your sustainability focus areas, you know, would be, and also, will you be reporting on the metrics through this year?
Yes, definitely, Ushay. We'll be reporting this year as well. Actually, as we speak, we are in preparation for our next board meeting, which is happening on the 14th of February on Valentine's Day. So we'll be presenting to the board using the ESG matrix. But yeah, so 2024 is going to be a very challenging year, given that we are kind of recovering from a financial crisis last year and the year before. So this year, given the fact that the energy cost, everything had gone up back in Sri Lanka, we will be focusing heavily on our energy reduction targets, which we report based on our ESG matrix by GSMA. So GHG emission reductions are at the top of our list of activities that we are focusing on. And then following through will be the digital inclusion activities that we were working on throughout the years, starting from way back in 2003 with the active projects we were working on. So we are continuing with that. And then the social innovation side of activities. So, but I will reiterate that our highest prioritized activity would be on the GHG emission reduction and the energy reduction and going into renewables. And we will be definitely reporting based on this on a quarterly basis throughout 2024. And I think going forward, it will be 2025, 2026 as well. Yeah.
Absolutely great. Thank you so much, Asid. Apple, go ahead. Tell us where your focus areas will be. And the big question, will you be reporting on the ESG metrics this year as well? And 2025, 2026, 2027?
One big yes. We're going to report against the ESG metrics this year. We're very busy operationalizing sustainability across the business units, of course, using the ESG metrics as our scorecard. And we are still all hands on deck on our green network strategy at Globe as part of our net zero roadmap. So we're hopeful about the SBTI commitments. We hope we get it soon. But you, again, as what I mentioned earlier, aside from those, you won't catch us, you know, sharing something new, because what we want to do is deepen the quality of our work in sustainability so that we can also disclose accordingly. So that's what we have in store for this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been amazing having two of you on the call, ladies and gentlemen. Apple from Globe and Asid from Dialogue Axiata. Thank you so much. We don't have any questions at this time. And so very shortly, I will be passing over to Janine. I just want to, again, reiterate that a lot of work is going on the Biodiversity Project Group. And if you want to know more about it or to participate, please do us an email. Drop a question, and we'll be very happy to provide you with. Oh, there is one question in the chat. Okay, 1 second. Let me see if I can find it. For some reason, the last question that I have is quite a while ago. Unfortunately, I can't see it. I don't know if someone can post it up. Okay. It's carbon credit generation. Okay, let me see if I can find that. All right, so the question says, is carbon credit generation seen as a revenue generation opportunity by Globe or Dialogue? So the question goes to both of you, if you can quickly take a stab at it. Is carbon credit generation seen as a revenue generation opportunity by either of your organizations? Okay.
For us,
Let's go. Yeah, go ahead.
We're not deep diving into it just yet. So we're waiting for any guidance from the SBTI on this. It's quite early stage for now.
Yeah. So from Dialogue's point of view, at this very moment, we are not looking at it from a revenue generating point of view. We are definitely looking at it from a more sustainability ESG kind of part of our responsibility to the environment point of view. So we are working on reducing it right now. So we are trying to go into renewable as much as possible. Last year, we solarized about 1,068 towers. So likewise, we are moving on that path. But right now, the short answer, we are not looking at it from a revenue generating option. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. It was really great having you on the call and looking forward to connect with you on other calls. Thank you and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And with that, I will be passing it over to Janine.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. A major thank you to James and Tim of GSMA, who showed the real value and the unique insights that the mobile metrics for mobile can bring when aggregated across the industry. And also thank you very much to Apple and Asit, who've shared and demonstrated the real value that the ESG metrics for mobile can bring to the business as a tool to have meaningful conversations across all levels of the organizations, and even more so to really operationalize sustainability throughout the business and to drive change and realize a positive impact. So thank you very much for that. Before we wrap, I just wanted to also, for those of you that are attending Mobile World Congress in Barcelona end of the month, to explain, we'll be running a seminar on the value of ESG for sustainable growth and the link of driving sustainable business practices and the link to also generating positive business outcomes. And so that session will be held on Wednesday, the 28th of February at 12 o'clock. So for those of you who are on the ground in Barcelona, we would love to see you there and continue the conversations. But for now, thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you for your questions on the line and for all your attention. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.